My name is Lauren Hayes. I am 30 years old. 11 years ago, my mother openly told everyone at our family reunion that I had no real drive and would always be the one holding our name back, while my older sister soared ahead, and the way she said it with that cold little smile made it clear she believed every word. That moment taught me never to show my full hand. Right now, we are crammed into a small conference room at our family lawyer's office in a suburban enclave near Honolulu for the surprise reading of an asset transfer tied to my late grandmother, and my mother is already leaning across the table with venom in her voice, insisting the bulk must go to my older sister because I have never contributed anything meaningful. My hands are steady on the table, but inside I am boiling with a fierce, unbreakable resolve. I will not let her rewrite my worth one more time. If you have ever been written off by your own mother while you were secretly building something bigger than she could imagine, hit that like button and tell me in the comments what city you are watching from right now. I read every single one, and it means everything. The lawyer cleared his throat and slid the folder across the polished table. My mother, Barbara Hayes, snatched it first, her manicured nails tapping the cover like she already owned whatever was inside. My father, Thomas Hayes, sat beside her in his usual button-down, but this time his jaw tightened in a way I had never seen before. He actually cut in before she could speak again, his voice low and sharp. Barbara, let the man finish before you start dividing things that aren't yours yet. It was the first time in years I'd heard him push back so directly, and the surprise of it almost knocked the breath out of me. My older sister, Nicole Hayes, sat on my mother's other side legs, crossed designer sandals swinging like she was already celebrating. My older sister's husband, Greg Lawson, hovered behind her chair, nodding along as if every word my mother said was gospel. Across from me, my best friend and coworker, Amanda Torres, had come along for moral support. She gave me a tiny encouraging nod under the table. The only other person in the room was Victor Lang, an old acquaintance of my grandmother's who had flown in from the mainland to witness the reading, because the asset involved some technical business documents he had helped draft years earlier. He watched my mother with the kind of quiet distaste that told me he had seen this side of her before. The lawyer began explaining that my grandmother, Eleanor, had left a substantial portfolio of investments and a small but valuable piece of commercial property on the island. My mother's face lit up at the word substantial, but then the lawyer read the clause that made her freeze. The primary beneficiary was me, Lauren, with provisions for the rest of the family, only if I chose to share. My mother's head snapped toward me so fast I heard her necklace click. "Lauren, you cannot seriously think this is fair?" My mother said, her voice dripping with that familiar mix of honey and acid. "You work some little tech job that barely pays the bills while my older sister has built a real life here with Greg and the kids. She actually contributes to this family. You just drift." She waved a hand at me like I was an inconvenience taking up space. My father's reaction was immediate and startling. He slammed one palm flat on the table, not loud enough to be dramatic, but hard enough that everyone jumped. "Enough, Barbara. This is Eleanor's decision, not yours to rewrite in front of everyone." His eyes flicked to me for a split second, something like pride mixed with guilt flashing across his face before he looked away again. It was so different from his usual quiet size that the room went still for a beat. My older sister recovered first, letting out a soft, pitying laugh. "My mother's just being practical, Dad. Lauren has always been the dreamer in the family. Remember when she turned down that stable job offer last year because she wanted to follow her passion? This money would be wasted on her." Amanda squeezed my knee under the table, her eyes flashing with protective anger. She kept silent for now. Victor Lang simply leaned back in his chair, one eyebrow raised, watching the whole exchange like a man who had just confirmed a long-held suspicion. I kept my face calm, the same modest expression I had worn for the last 20 months whenever I was around my family. 20 months of letting my mother and my older sister believe I was still scraping by as a mid-level data coordinator at a small local firm. Here on the island, They had no idea I was actually a senior data strategist, earning $58,000 a month before taxes at one of the largest cloud computing companies with offices in Honolulu. I had 3 patents pending stock options that had already vested into 7 figures, and a portfolio my accountant called aggressively comfortable. I had hidden all of it deliberately, the same way my grandmother Eleanor had hidden her own quiet wealth until the day she passed when I was 26. She had raised me after my parents' accident when I was 9, teaching me that real character only shows when someone thinks you have nothing left to offer. So when I started dating Ethan Brooks 20 months ago, and my mother immediately began comparing him unfavorably to more suitable men from better connected families, I made my choice. I would let her see only the version of me she expected, the modest daughter who still lived in a small rented condo, drove a 7-year-old crossover, and dressed in simple clothes from the mall. I wanted to know who my mother really was when she believed I could offer her family nothing but another mouth to feed. The lawyer wrapped up the reading and suggested we schedule a follow-up once I had reviewed the documents. My mother stood up so fast her chair scraped back. "We will discuss this at home tonight, Lauren." As a family. The way she said family felt like a threat wrapped in silk. Outside in the warm Hawaiian afternoon air, Amanda pulled me aside while the others walked toward the parking lot. "That was brutal even for her," she whispered. "You okay? Because if you need me to help dig into anything you know, I have got your back. I still have those contacts from our last project." I nodded the resolve from the conference room, hardening into something sharper. "I am more than okay. I think it is finally time I stopped pretending." Later that same evening at my parents' house in the quiet suburban enclave, where palm trees lined the streets and every lawn looked magazine perfect, the real conversation began. My mother had invited my older sister and Greg over for what she called a family strategy session. Ethan had texted that he would swing by after work, thinking it was just a casual dinner. He still believed the version of me I had shown him, the easygoing girlfriend who worked long hours in tech support and worried about rent. We were halfway through my mother's famous grilled pineapple chicken when she set her fork down and turned to me with that smile I had come to recognize as the opening move in one of her attacks. "Lauren, about the inheritance my mother started." Voice sweet, but eyes cold. "It would be selfish of you to keep it all to yourself when my older sister and Greg are trying to expand their consulting business. They have actual plans. You could sign over the commercial property to them and keep the smaller investments. It is the least you could do after everything we have sacrificed for you." My father, who had been unusually quiet since the lawyer's office, suddenly set his glass down harder than necessary. "Barbara, you're not going to pressure her at my dinner table. Eleanor left it to Lauren for a reason." His tone carried a frustrated edge I had rarely heard, like he was finally tired of playing referee. My older sister jumped in before my mother could respond. "Dad, you are being naive. Lauren has never shown any interest in building anything lasting. She is 30 and still single-handedly dating that nice but completely average Ethan. If she had any sense, she would have listened to my mother months ago and pursued someone with real connections." I felt the words land like small cuts, but I kept my expression neutral, filing away every insult the way I always did. Ethan arrived just then, letting himself in with the key I had given him, and the conversation shifted to polite small talk, while my mother served dessert. But I caught the look my mother exchanged with my older sister across the table. That silent agreement that said this discussion was far from over. After Ethan had kissed me goodnight and left, I lingered in the hallway outside the kitchen. I heard my mother and my older sister's voices drifting through the half-open door. "She cannot be allowed to keep that property," my mother was saying, low and urgent. "We need it for the expansion my older sister and Greg are planning. Ethan is fine for now, but once the business grows, we can steer Lauren towards someone who actually brings value to this family. She has always been the weak link. We just have to make sure she feels grateful enough to do the right thing." My older sister laughed softly. "She is so trusting. She still thinks we actually like her little tech job. If she only knew how embarrassing it is to tell people my sister is basically a glorified data entry person. My hands shook, but not with hurt this time. With clarity. This was not new snobbery. This was a long pattern I had finally caught in full color. I slipped out the back door without saying goodbye, the warm night air thick with the scent of plumeria. Amanda's text lit up my phone the moment I reached my car. I pulled some strings, got the full asset breakdown and a couple of old emails your mother sent to the lawyer last month, trying to contest the will already. Want me to send them, I typed back with steady fingers. Yes, and tell Victor Lang I need to meet him tomorrow. It is time. In the weeks that followed the lawyer's office meeting, I continued showing up as the same modest Lauren my mother expected, listening to her pointed comments about how I should be more grateful for the opportunities my family had given me. My father's reactions varied each time. One evening, he left the room abruptly when she started in on my lack of ambition. Another time, he interrupted with a quiet but firm, "That is enough," that left my mother momentarily speechless. It was as if the lawyer's office had cracked something open in him, but he still was not ready to fully stand up to her. Ethan remained affectionate, completely unaware of the storm building around us. I accepted his suggestion that we make our relationship more serious, even letting him talk about future plans, while inside I gathered every piece of evidence. Victor Lang reached out through Robert Klein and offered to help. He had his own history with my mother from years earlier, when she had tried to cut him out of a small business deal my grandmother had arranged. I have been waiting for the right moment, he told me over coffee one afternoon. Your mother has burned a lot of bridges. I still have the paperwork. Amanda and I spent late nights in my condo going through financial records, old emails and social media posts my mother had made, bragging about my older sister's successes while barely mentioning me. The picture that emerged was clear. My mother had been systematically trying to isolate me socially and financially, so that when the time came, I would have no choice but to hand over whatever she wanted. The breaking point came 3 weeks later at a large community fundraiser my mother had organized to support local family businesses. It was the perfect stage. I arrived in the same simple dress she expected, but this time I carried a folder in my bag and a resolve I had been sharpening for months. My mother spotted me across the crowded room and waved me over with that practiced smile. My older sister and Greg stood beside her, already deep in conversation with several influential local business owners. Ethan was chatting with his own parents nearby, still thinking this was just another family event. "Lauren, darling, you made it," my mother said loud enough for the small circle around her to hear. "Try not to embarrass us tonight. These people are important." The words were meant to sting, and they did, but this time I smiled back with something entirely different behind it. "Actually, Mother," I said calmly, "I think it is time everyone here learned exactly who I am and what kind of family you have been running." The circle around us quieted. My father, standing a few feet away, turned with a look of genuine shock that quickly hardened into something frustrated and protective. He stepped closer, but did not speak yet, waiting to see how far this would go. My mother's smile faltered for the first time all evening. She recovered in a heartbeat, leaning in so the small circle of local business owners could hear every word. Her voice laced with that honeyed contempt she reserved for moments like this. "Lauren, darling, what on earth are you talking about? Do not make a scene here in front of people who actually matter. You have always had this dramatic flair inventing problems where there are none, while my older sister actually knows how to carry herself with grace and contribute something real to this family." The words hit like a slap, but I held my ground, the folder in my bag feeling heavier by the second. My older sister stepped forward with a soft, pitying laugh that carried across the nearby tables. "My mother is right, Lauren. This is not the place for whatever little grudge you are holding. We all know you have struggled to keep up, but airing dirty laundry at a fundraiser, that is low even for you." My father's reaction this time was different from the lawyer's office. He did not slam his hand or walk away. Instead, he let out a short, incredulous laugh that echoed awkwardly across the tent, the kind that made a couple of nearby guests turn their heads in surprise. "Barbara, you cannot seriously be sending anonymous threats at your own daughter's expense in the middle of a public event," he said, voice rising just enough to draw more attention before he forced a tight smile and pulled my mother aside by the elbow. In that private huddle, I caught his low, frustrated whisper, "This has gone too far. I have let you steer things for years because it kept the peace, but pushing her like this, it is destroying everything Eleanor built." The admission stunned me. It was the closest he had ever come to acknowledging his own role. Yet it felt frustratingly late, like he was still choosing the path of least resistance, even now. Ethan moved closer, his face a mix of confusion and hurt. "Lauren, what is she talking about?" "You told me your job was just entry-level support work. We have been together 20 months, and you never mentioned any inheritance or big property. Your mother texted me earlier, saying you might need help, because things were getting out of hand with family pressure. Is that true?" The question landed like another blow, but I refused to let it knock me off balance. Amanda stepped up beside me, her presence steady as always, while Victor Lang handed me the grandmother's letter without a word. Robert Klein had joined us quietly, too, nodding encouragement from the edge of the group. I held the page up so the circle of business owners and guests could see it clearly. "Actually, Mother," I said, keeping my voice calm and clear, "that little data job earns me $58,000 a month before taxes. I am a senior data strategist with 3 patents pending and stock options that have already made my portfolio more than comfortable." Grandmother knew exactly who I was, which is why she left the commercial property and the investments to me. She also left this letter explaining why she structured it that way after watching you pressure me for years to hand everything over to my older sister's consulting firm, even when it meant ignoring her own wishes. Gasps rippled through the small crowd. A local business leader named Harlan Reed, who had been chatting with my older sister earlier, pulled out his phone and started typing notes, his expression shifting from polite interest to clear disapproval. My mother's face went pale, then flushed with real rage. She recovered with another vicious jab, her sarcasm sharp as ever. "Oh, please, Lauren. If that were true, you would not have hidden it like some dirty secret. You have always been the weak link, the one who drifts while my older sister actually builds something. This is just another way for you to tear the family apart, because you cannot stand that she is the one who matters." My father tried to intervene again, his voice carrying that same awkward edge from moments earlier. "Barbara, enough with the public spectacle." He said, the laugh gone now, but the frustration plain. Yet even as he spoke, I could see the irreversible crack forming. He had defended me too late, and the damage was already spreading. I kept going, laying out the emails Amanda had gathered, showing my mother's attempts to contest the will before it was even read. Victor Lang confirmed the details from his own records, explaining how my mother had tried to cut him out of similar arrangements years ago. The murmurs grew louder. Phones were out now, recording snippets, and I felt the power shift in real time. Ethan pulled me aside, then his voice low and strained. "Lauren, you hid all of this. The money, the job, the inheritance. I thought we were building something honest. Your mother warned me you had secrets, but I defended you. Now it feels like I have been the placeholder while you tested everyone. I cannot do this anymore. Not if trust was never there." His words carried finality, and in that moment, I knew the relationship was over. The loss hit hard, a sharp ache that reminded me exactly what partial victory felt like. I had protected myself, but the cost was real and permanent. My mother tried one last attack, stepping forward with fresh venom. "See, even Ethan sees it now. You have ruined everything with your lies. Keep the property if you want, but you will lose the only family you have left. We will make sure everyone knows the real story about how unreliable you are." But the crowd was already turning. Harlan Reed muttered something about questionable ethics and walked away, and several other guests followed, distancing themselves from the scene. My older sister and Greg stood frozen, their expansion plans crumbling in front of them, as whispers spread about the family's pressure tactics. The fundraiser continued in an awkward hum, but the damage was done. In the weeks that followed the fundraiser, the commercial property stayed in my name, and the investments provided the stability I had quietly built my life around all along. I kept my job, my patents moved forward, and I set firm boundaries that meant holidays, and casual calls with my parents became rare and strained. My father reached out once in a quiet message, admitting he should have spoken up sooner, but it changed nothing. The trust was gone. My mother never apologized, only doubled down in private texts about how I had betrayed the family. My older sister's firm faced some quiet reputational hits from the public whispers, though nothing dramatic enough to satisfy any sense of full justice. Ethan and I ended things cleanly a few days after the fundraiser. The breakup left an empty space I still feel on quiet evenings, a reminder that choosing myself came with real, irreversible loss. I gained my independence and the truth about my mother's character, but I lost the illusion of family unity and the relationship I had thought was solid. Looking back now, I realize my grandmother's lesson held true in the end. People show who they are when they believe you have nothing left to give them. My mother showed me her contempt, my father showed me his quiet complicity, and I showed myself that I was stronger than any of it. The inheritance gave me options, but the real gift was finally stepping away without regret, even if it meant walking alone. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your self-respect, drop a comment below and tell me how it turned out for you. Your stories remind me I am not alone in this.